Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Dark Verse. We are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto mastered all elements to win Azula's heart, part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. He actually acts a lot like I did in my past life. I used to think I could save everyone, that everything rested itself on my shoulders and that I could change everyone's minds, but I was wrong. No one can change the world by themselves. Change comes through unity and alliance, not through sheer power of individuality. It's kind of ironic for me now, that it took an entire lifetime for me to learn these lessons, and now some fool is following the same pattern and making the same mistakes, and that an entire order dedicated to that endless cycle has existed for the past 1,000 years. I fight not to return a favor, not to prove myself worthy, not to restore my clan, not even to prove myself worthy in my own to redeem myself from my failure. I fight for the future and all those who inhabit it, and I shall show them the meaning of power through sacrifice and wisdom. And perhaps someday, the world will be allied in unity and no one will have to place all their hopes and dreams on one person. They'll be able to accomplish their ambitions through their own strength, not through another's. Naruto finished his speech adamantly, earning respectful glances from my entirely, with a look of victory from Azula that this boy would fight by his nation once more. Azula walked towards Naruto calmly and stuck out her hand, earning a perplexed look from her friends, and a smile from Naruto. The two members of royal blood shook each other's hands as a new alliance was cemented in stone, a victory for the Fire Nation. Let us not fail our nation, and let us show the world that it doesn't need to put all of its hopes on one person. Naruto calmly stated, earning an agreeing nod from Azula in the process. As the four teens climbed into the carriage to resume a journey 3 hours delayed, each sat comfortably within her, or in Naruto's case his, corner of the carriage and settled in nicely. The motion of the vehicle resumed again, being led by the remaining guardsmen. All four shared smiles at one another as the resumption of the trip continued, with each member concentrating on their separate task. Ty Lee meditated in one of her acrobat poses, Mai sat calmly once more as boredom overtook her, and Azula seemed to concentrate on Naruto for the past 5 minutes until she closed her eyes and waited for the arrival that would lead them to the fleet. Naruto calmly closed his eyes and drifted off into meditation, contemplating his inner thoughts to himself. Well, this certainly has been an interesting day within the past few thousand years. I honestly didn't think my rescuers would take to me in such a friendly manner. I still gotta wonder if all of my relations in all those villages are still in affect. I mean, I know I did everything the Kyuubi said, and prepared for a future like this and all that, but I wonder how much of it really mattered. I mean, I know I agreed to have enact the CRA, and Kami knows how many people lined up at my door when they find out that I'm the last remaining member of the Namikaze and Uzumaki clans, but man, that was nuts. Having all those royal clans trying to set me up with their daughters and such, wanting me to get on an early road making heirs. I guess Sasuke really didn't have it easy after all, might have been why he went nuts, hey ha. But seriously, I can't believe I went through all that political bullshit just because Kurama said it would prove useful in a future where everyone we know might be dead. How exactly does it prove useful? How many girls did I have to get with in order to secure seats of power in the future? And what does it even matter now? All of them are dead, sure, but I can bring them back with the Gedo Rinne Tensai technique. Though that itself would be a massive pain considering such a use of chakra. Bringing back so many people I care for and love would drain an immense supply of chakra from my body. I mean, Nagato-san died from using that technique to bring back everyone who died during Akatsuki's assault on Konoha, and that alone ended up killing him due to how much chakra he had to exert. Even with all my chakra I have now, as well as Kurama's, performing such a grand-scale technique would probably knock me out cold for at least a day or so, which may or not be a bit of a setback at the specific time when I perform it. I'm not even sure if the current Hai no Kuni would even recognize the lands I was supposed to jointly rule over anymore. Given the fact that none of them probably even exist anymore, and then there's also the facts of getting them to recognize my own royal bloodline, seeing if they recognize the Clan Restoration Act, and getting them all to recognize each royal bloodline of each individual partner of mine. I knew Kurama said this was going to be difficult and I agreed to it, but damn does it look impossible now, especially when I'm face to face with a situation I honestly thought I'd never see. Especially when all of the ladies are brought back and getting them to all agree with one another again, recognize the situation we're in and having them all manage to coexist with one another and the nations of today. I mean goddamn, how many wives did I get before I died anyway? Not like I was able to enjoy much time with them individually or at all considering that the entire world got destroyed and everyone I knew died, in which in the end I was ultimately powerless to do anything, not like I am now. Which is strange, despite how many of them there were, I got to know them all in such a short amount of time, and honestly, I think I still love them all too. Hinata was the first of them all, and of course, was the first one to confess her love to me. She put herself in between the diva path of pain for me, she risked it all to save me and nearly got killed as a result. All that time she had been watching me, admiring me, and just waiting for me to notice her, and I was too stupid and dense to see it. After everything she's gone through, with having to put up with Neji and Hanabi's abuse in the early years as well as Hiyashi being a complete prick before I managed to make him see the light, she's gone through a lot. As for Tamari, she didn't just volunteer herself to be at my side, it was also encouraged by my local friend, the Godime Kazekage and fellow Jinchuriki, Sabaku no Gaara. Ever since when Gaara and I fought during Orochimaru's invasion of Konohagakure, a bond was formed in the process and the next time we met, it would be as friends and equals. Gaara, like me, had a pretty terrible life growing up. Everyone hated him and called him a monster, and from what I understand his version of Iruka-sensei, a man named Yashimaru, ended up trying to kill him because he blamed him for the death of sister who was incidentally Gaara's mother, Karura. After his uncle and only true friend tried to kill him, Gaara lost it for quite a while and became obsessed with killing people through his powers in joint combination with the Biju Shukaku. He devoted his life to destroying them all and living only for himself. He was a reflection of what I could have been if I had been consumed by hatred. Incidentally, he was also similar to how Sasuke went down a path of betrayal as well. But Gaara saw the light when I tried to convince him how things weren't all bad. Sasuke refused to see that side of things. Even when he had won over the affection of Tsunagakure, he still wanted someone he truly trusted to be Temari's husband. I mean, she was his only sister, it would make sense he wanted someone he thought as a brother to take care of her. Temari actually put her name forward on a list of candidates to be another wife of mine. I guess it was because of how she felt that I changed Gaara's perspective on life, and I saved her brother from becoming another Sasuke early on. That, and after so many years passed after the incident at the Valley of the End, I had changed drastically in character and in figure. So I guess that helped push her in my direction as well. When Temari requested permission to marry me from her brother, I heard Gaara was only too happy to oblige. I was someone he trusted to be Temari's husband. I think the other one might have been Shikamaru, but that guy wasn't really the type to be married to a Hokage's sister and to have so many responsibilities to be tied to royalty and having to go through the political system of two separate countries. That also would have given me quite a seat of power in Suna as well, if everything hadn't gone to shit shortly after. Two women, one nearly twice my age and the other still significantly older, approached me at the same time to discuss marriage plans with me. Terumi Mei, the Godime Mizukage, and Ba-chan Tsunade herself, the Godime Hokage of my own village. At that point I only had one thought in my mind, what the actual. According to Tsunade-chan, as I started to know her by shortly afterwards, a decision she had come to when deciding who I would marry when it came to royal clans eventually narrowed down to the Senju clan and the Terumi clan. Adding such strong blood to my own blood would create children who'd be capable of near miracles, and help revive the Namikaze Uzumaki clans that much faster. Tsunade said the reason she wanted to marry me was that I was the one who showed her the light that she had only previously seen in her old partner Dan. And that I rescued her from drowning in a pit of darkness that could have led to the restoration of the hubby Tem's arms, the same arms responsible for killing Oji-san. According to her, I was the person who taught her what it meant to be a Hokage, what it meant to believe in a cause that could protect people precious to her. Apparently, she also owed a favor to Ka-san. They were good friends once apparently, and she promised that if anything happened to her Ka-san, that she would take care of her son when he was born. She lost sight after that promise after Dan's death, and apparently, was one of the many regrets she carried on her back. Tsunade-chan apparently felt awful that she wasn't there to be my foster mom throughout my life, so she decided to be the next best thing in her own thoughts, my wife, or in this case, one of my many wives. She told me that she'd help me bring back the Uzumaki Namikaze bloodlines, and that her Senju blood would run deep within the veins of the future I'd be providing the world. Mei-chan was interested in the Namikaze Uzumaki restoration program for a number of reasons, to put it lightly. I remember that she briefly knew Tu-san, and considered him quite attractive, and that she was actually going to make a move on him before he and Ka-san got together. She already considered me extraordinarily handsome in her own terms, telling me I was definitely my father's son and that definitely received all of the beneficial genes of the Namikaze bloodline. And since I had already defeated Pain, who was supposed to be invincible, months prior, she was also adamantly attracted to me because of my strength. And upon hearing the CRA imposed on me, she didn't quite leap at me like others did, but she was greatly interested in the prospect of it, as she had been looking for a husband for quite some time. I'm actually surprised she didn't have one sooner. And according to some rumors I heard shortly after Mei got involved with my CRA, I may have broken the heart of one of her bodyguards, Chojuro, one of the current members of the Kiri no Shinobigatana Shichinen Shu. Which actually kind of frightened me at the time when the prospect of a big angry man wielding a huge sword would try to come for my head. Turns out though when I actually got to meet Chojuro he seemed kind of shy and kind and not really the hot-headed guy the first pictured. I blame Zabuza-san for that earlier image. He actually wished me luck on restoring my clans, and specifically asked me to take care of Mei-chan for him. A good guy that Chojuro. I at first questioned to Tsunade-chan that her appearance was sorely based on genjutsu, and that she was much older than she made herself out to be. Normally under any other circumstance, I would have been punched through the wall halfway across Konoha for a comment like that, but given what the incidents that were soon to transpire she held back from clobbering me. She said that after certain act was performed, other words, her genjutsu appearance would become her actual appearance, and a great amount of her youth could be restored in the process, give or take 20 years, putting her in her 50s while her actual appearance would reassemble a woman in her mid-30s. That act was hammering her like bent nail. Oh for sake, why on Kami's green earth do you have to put the most delicate of situations in such a vulgar namesake? Because I don't like to beat around the bush and sugarcoat things like you do a lot, Kit. I don't sugarcoat anything, it's called having tact. It's called being a, hey, I remember that little experience quite well, and you guys weren't even officially married yet, you little rabble-rouser. Then again, not like you officially got to have any weddings anyway, considering how everything went to Kingdom Come in the end anyway. Still, got alive in the moment, man was that woman smooth, I mean like newborn full smooth, gotta hand it to her even in her age, she was damn vibrant. Can you please stop talking about that way about Tsunade? I mean I knew for a long time as a Ba-chan who suddenly was to become my wife, and then in order for her that grand scheme of her to restore her youth would be too Have your seminal fluids mix with hers while being coated with of my chakra, allowing it to literally revitalize her body, restoring much of her youth in the process so she would actually look like her fake appearance rather than just having it be an illusion. Sounds like a lame deus ex machina to me, but hey, it got results, now didn't it? Yeah, I'll agree with you there. Knowing that I was actually looking at Tsunade-chan for what she really was and not a reflection of what she wanted, she was quite beautiful. And you do realize we'll probably have to do that exact situation again since she died, right? Untrue. She said once that ritual was preformed that it only needed to be done once, and that if she was ever brought back from the grave, her appearance from the ritual would remain. Wow, you really are a fun sucker, you know that, Kit. Hey, I'm just telling you what she told me, Kurama. How did she even learn about something like that anyway? She read from an old tome, no idea where she got it by the way, that if a male Jinchuriki engaged in intercourse with an older woman and coated his seminal fluids with the chakra of his biju, it could restore the youth of his older mate considerably. You do realize though she could have gotten pregnant, right? And that little part of the ritual won't exactly be intact when she comes back. Meaning you'd still have to knock her up once or thrice in order to get some heirs. Hey, I win. Anyway, moving on, I believe after that little ritual, Mei-chan got all worked up over, watching, us. Some exotic voyeur fetish of hers, she'd get along brilliantly with you, Kurama. Then she wanted to get involved, and then. Oh right, I remember that, that little Temomoi burst in after he heard all the ruckus you caused with the Senju woman and found you and the Godime Hokage of Konoha completely, with the Godime Mizukage literally trying to crawl up onto you. And then you ran for your life. And then I ran for my life. Nothing better than seeing you run down Kurigakure with an angry black man chasing you, priceless. It wasn't funny, Kurama, it was downright terrifying. Oh, if only your two-san could have seen it. I bet he did, ya know, from the afterlife. He was probably laughing his ass off. Ka-san was probably doing the same thing. Can you blame them? You're an asshole, Kurama. I love you too, Kit. That would have been a big step up for me too. I'd be the husband of both the Godime Hokage of Konohagakure and of the Godime Hokage of Kurigakure. I pretty much would have been a pseudo Hokage in two renowned villages. Shoulda, woulda, coulda, Kit. Too true, too true. Next came both Hotaru and Shizuka, two girls of equal passion who I came to love and respect as much as the rest of my lovers and wives. Hotaru was a renowned member of the Tsushigumo clan who saw herself as the devoted servant to Utakata-san. One of my fellow Jinchuriki who held Seiken, the Rokubi, the six-tailed slug, inside him. Utakata-san was one of the few fellow Jinchuriki I actually had the honor of meeting other than Gaara and Karabi-san, a shame that our time together was originally that of cat and mouse. Utakata had the false delusion that the bond between a master and a student was nothing more than false pretense and trickery to be used to suit the master. This kind of thinking was imprinted on him when thought his former sensei, Harusame, had betrayed him and tried to take his life. This was in fact, the other way around. Harusame had apparently tried to extract the Rokubi from Utakata without killing him, wanting him to lead a normal life without having to bear the burden of being a Jinchuriki. However, despite his noble intent, Harusame's mission failed, and he was killed in the process. Multiple Hunter Nin and Anbu squads from Kurigakure had attempted to forcefully retrieve Utakata-san or try to truly convince him their village was not what it once was. I can't say I blame Uta-san for not believing them, and consistently told them he would live his life as he saw fit and never be anyone's prisoner. It's strange really, he wasn't quite what I expected him to be, but I'd rather have not known him any other way. He wasn't like me and he wasn't quite like how Gaara-san originally was, he was just himself. A wanderer, a loner, a bit misled, but still a good man at heart. It pained me to hear that he was eventually captured by Akatsuki and had Seiken forcefully extracted from him, killing him in the process while breaking Hotaru's heart, who heard of the vile deed 4 months later. Her beloved master never did return to her, and I lost a person who could have been a friend, and more importantly, a brother. When I initially went to talk to Hotaru-chan after she had learned what had become of Utakata, things didn't exactly go smoothly at first. She had fallen into a deep depression, and even contemplated committing harikiri for failing her master. Something I immediately jumped and told her was not worth it in a million years. I told her that she had never once failed Utakata-san, and that he chose his path regardless of its consequences. He specifically chose to venture alone because he knew if anyone stronger than him were to try to harm him, he didn't want anyone else caught in the crossfire, which is exactly why he left her behind in the first place. It's not that he didn't want her there, he didn't want her to get hurt. Hotaru more or less broke down after I apparently gave her a revelation, and I swear to Kami that my old uniform never did get dry after she practically cried a literal river onto me. I stayed in Kiri for a bit afterwards, telling her of how the CRA had been thrust upon me in all of its glorious detail. She seemed very intent on listening when I told her of the details, restoring the legacy of my mother and father's clans, building a future I saw fit for my heirs, the multiple wives brides scenario, the whole damn thing. After 5 days in Kiri, I was ready to get back to Konoha, only to have Hotaru run up to me as I headed for the gates, asking if not pleading to me to be one of wives and lovers, and to help me build the future I aspired to let my children roam. I at first highly questioned her intent at pledging herself to me, as I knew that she had loved Utakata-san dearly, and why she would want to be with mere months after his death seemed a little bit unseemly. I remember Hotaru saying that she wanted to devote herself to my cause because it was the best way to remember and honor Utakata-sama, in her own words. She saw in her own mind that since I was a friend and a brother to Utakata, even if briefly, that was worth following my path since her beloved master had come to trust me on his terms. Something he hardly ever done with anyone while he was alive. And thus the Tsushigumo clan was to introduce itself within my blood as well, if only things had been that easy. As for Utakata-san, he eventually became one of my 9 paths of truth after being freed from the Kabuto's impure world resurrection technique near the peak of the Fourth Ninja World War. The same fate eventually befell all of my fellow Jinchuriki, even Gaara and Karabi-san, who hadn't even passed on yet like the others did. And by then Hotaru had already devoted herself to me despite her former feelings to Utakata, though she still cared deeply for him and wished to free him from Madara's grasp. Ah yes, I had almost forgotten about that little trump card of ours. Not like I enjoyed getting that so-called power. The benefits to it are enormous. It increased your chakra level almost 20 times what it already was, and that, saying a lot, given that you already had a near cage level of chakra even without my help. But was it worth it, Kurama? Did it even matter in the end? Perhaps, perhaps not, but it was Nagato's gift he gave you when we met him again after he was revived by Orochimaru II. He imprinted or rather unlocked within you the ability of the Rinnegan, which in turn allowed you to use paths like he originally did. But instead of 6 you could use 9, most likely relating to me due how many tails I have. The whole reason you had the ability to use that Kekkei Genkei within the first place was because of how it traced back to the first Rakudo Sannin, and how he was actually related to the Namikaze bloodline, being your great-grandfather times 20 times, which we weren't informed of until being visited by a vision of him right before we encountered Madara for the last time. Having the Rinnegan awakened within me hurt like a bitch. It hurt me too, Yano. It felt like someone stuck my eyes in lava. Must have been even worse from the others, having a bloodline instilled within them that wasn't even theirs. They knew of the consequences when the Rakudo Sannin connected all of our minds together and asked if they wanted to be joined to you in our final battle against Madara. He told them an alliance of the Biju under the keepsake of the paths would be indomitable, but it could only occur if we all agreed to be forever bound by it. None of us would ever be the same again, and that having the Rinnegan installed in anyone else but you would hurt them even more than it did you previously, and that we would share their combined pain equally. Don't remind me, experiencing their combined pain as each one bore the anguish of having the Rinnegan established within their bodies was enough torment to make me think I was going to die before even facing Madara. I have never once in my life felt that much pain, and I hope to never experience something like that ever again. You'd think it Utakata, Roshi, Han, Yugito, Fu and Yagura wouldn't have felt as much pain due to the fact they were already dead from the neck up after being summoned by Orochimaru number 2, I guess it goes to show ya the dead can feel anguish too. I still remember being a bit creeped out by the fact that 6 out of my 9 fellow Jinchuriki were still technically deceased when our minds and bodies were joined together. I was overjoyed by the fact I could finally talk to all of my fellow brothers and sisters for once in my life, that we could all share each other's experiences and finally fight as one, but that didn't change the facts that 6 of us had already died and were still clinically dead. The sage did say that once the Rinnegan had spread to the 6 deceased Jinchuriki, that the awakening of that specific Kekkei Genkai would revitalize their bodies and allow them to be reborn. Factually speaking, that the release of the bloodline limit of the original Rakudo Sanin would restore all the dead cell tissue within the body of a deceased person, thus allowing them to be alive again. You think that my brothers and sisters, the new paths, are still active? After my fight with Madara reached its climax, I couldn't find them, nor could I talk to them through our now connected minds. I still don't know if any of them are alive. They were never sealed with me inside that cave by that specter I ran across so long ago. If they were dead by now, we would have felt their absence in this world, and since you haven't made any remarks about not being able to feel their life force currently, I'd assume they're alive. Perhaps the reason you, or rather we, couldn't sense them before was due to the destruction unleashed by Madara, which was enough to cloud the world in darkness for at least 1,000 years apparently. It is more than likely that due to the near invulnerability of our paths that they were sent into a comatose state, and they have yet to be revitalized by you due to the fact that you haven't activated your Rinnegan nor summoned within thousands of years. Not that it was your fault that you couldn't, but you get what I'm driving at. That's surprisingly positive thinking coming from you, Kurama. In this new day and age, we've got to be positive, Kit. We cannot let ourselves be absorbed the feelings of failure or despair as we were before. We must press onward, regardless of any pain we might endure. I wholeheartedly agree, we must press on no matter the cost. Good to see you finally learned Gaki. I then came to the long end road of being set up with royals and renowned clans women who wanted to help me rebuild my clan. Surprisingly, all that madness didn't stop me. I thought of a few people who I personally wanted by my side, important clan be damned or not. The CRA said I could pick whoever I wanted as well, so I did. But the first, normal, one actually ended coming to me. Strangely, I actually understood Karen's motives for wanting to get involved with me. According to her, she practically hung over Sasuke like a shadow when his team hubby was still in affect. Apparently even more so than Sakura during our early genin days, and that's just frightening. But I guess after a few too many times of being used, abused and manipulated, Karen was starting to doubt whether or not Sasuke was really worth all the devotion she was giving him in order to realize his dreams. Apparently, she decided to finally abandon all loyalties to him when Danzo tried to use her as a human shield during his fight with Sasuke, and that Uchiha Tem used his Chidori sharp spear technique to just drill through Karen to get to Danzo. Not at all concerned with killing a teammate to get what he wanted. Then again, at that point I shouldn't have been surprised. Sasuke tried to kill me to get what he wanted years prior. Why would now have been so different? Karen and I originally joked that our soon-to-be marriage was only possible because both of us nearly took a Chidori technique to the heart, which we both had a good laugh about. According to her, as I was a much warmer version of Sasuke, to her, I was what she wanted him to have been, a strong but kind warrior with a lot of appeal. Her words, not mine. While I originally just thought Karen was using me as a replacement Sasuke of sorts, she quickly denied such an idea when I approached her about it. Sasuke nearly killed through cold-hearted manipulation and abuse. She wanted someone she felt was pure enough to be with her. To protect her from people like Sasuke, and most importantly, to love her. I agreed to her proposal, and then was yet another wife to be had, the first one who didn't have any royal blood relating to an esteemed clan. Then there was Hokuto and Isaribi, two girls I had actually met before who actually friggin' liked me, and I was too much of a dumbass to notice. Just like with Hinata. And finally you admit it. Shut it. Can't. Freedom of speech. Anyway, Hokuto and I met her when I traveled with Team Guy in a joint mission after I bribed Tsunade-chan with chestnut cake. Good times that. Our relationship began a bit rough though, when she tried to attack me not realizing I was a Konoha nin. We had a good laugh about, sat down to eat, got to know each other, the good stuff. Soon after that we learned that a tem named Akahoshi, who was the self-proclaimed Yondaime Hoshikage of the village, was a complete manipulative asshole. He and his followers Shiso and Yotaka had killed the Sandaime Hoshikage in secret, and planned to use the power of a fallen star, which Hoshigakure was named after, to imbue themselves with its power as well as all of Hoshigakure. Planning to take over the 5 nations with their combined strength. That tem even killed Natsuhi-chan, Sumaru-san's mother, with that infernal power of his. Honestly, even if such a plan were to fully commence, with all of the Hoshigakure nin being empowered by the star, I don't think it would have worked to Akahoshi's desire. I mean, I killed Akahoshi when he was at the peak of his power whilst imbued with the star with my Rasengan. And I was only a genin then. I'm pretty sure any jonin capable enough would have been able to defeat him, like Gai-sensei or Kakashi-sensei for example. And to take on the 5 countries. Hoshigakure was a little-known village within Kuma no Kuni itself, and barely had enough power to be a shinobi military standpoint. Akahoshi really didn't think such things through, he was just some fool with an overinflated ego. And that's why he ended up with a big gaping hole in his chest. Indeed. Unfortunately, I recall that when I blew a hole through Akahoshi's chest, it destroyed the star in the process, causing a massive shockwave that leveled the area we fought in. His followers Shiso and Yotaka, who were at the heart of the explosion since they were aiding Akahoshi during his fight with me, were apparently killed by the last. Sumaru, who was helping me fight that self-proclaimed tem, was apparently rescued mere seconds before the explosion by Gai-sensei's swift intervention. Due to my healing powers, I didn't die from the shockwave. But I was knocked out for approximately 3 days and was transported back to Konoha in the process. I didn't learn of what had transpired with Akahoshi until I woke up, of course, greeted by Shizune-chan and Kakashi-sensei. They told me of what had occurred, the death of Akahoshi and his followers at my hands, Sumaru's near-death experience, Hoshigakure's liberation and my 3-day coma. Much to my displeasure, apparently I had greatly worried Hokuto-chan ever since I launched that seemingly suicidal attack against Akahoshi tem, and she had been contacting Konoha every day since before I woke up to hear of my condition. When I sent a letter back to her myself stating that I had woken up and was recovering quickly, apparently she was greatly relieved to the point of tears. When I thought of Hokuto, I thought of someone I could trust. She was a strong, loyal yet independent girl who stayed as true to her heart as I ever did. The only reason she attacked me was because she thought as I with Akahoshi. I traveled to Hoshigakure myself to ask Hokuto if she wanted to be one of bride's wives through the Namikaze Uzumaki CRA, and more importantly, if she wanted me to help build the future I thought to achieve. My response was her shedding many tears of overwhelming joy, and being straddled with a rib-crushing embrace. Apparently, much to my surprise at the current time, Hoshigakure had now looked up to Konohagakure as a village of great heroism and selfless sacrifice following the dethroning of their self-proclaimed, backstabbing Yondaime Hoshikage Akahoshi. And more notably, Just like with the incident with Gato Tem at Nami no Kuni, Hoshigakure regarded as me some type of hero following Akahoshi's defeat. Which kinda makes sense, seeing as how I, albeit unintentionally, killed him. I shoulda thought that strategy through though. Attacking an unknown energy source with a source of possibly even greater energy obviously equals boom. I still think that the bridge Tazuna-san built in Nami no Kuni called the Great Naruto Bridge, still should have been named the Great Zabuza Bridge. Zabuza-san may have been a criminal and a murderer for such a long time, but he died with the honor of a true nin. He sacrificed himself to kill Gato Tem. He should have been the one honored that day, not me. Plus, Zabuza made the true sacrifice anyway. He died as a true warrior. I just got knocked out following Akahoshi's death. I guess beggars can't be choosers though. I still technically defeated a tyrant, and a traitorous Kage at that. Something which the Konoha Council stupidly tried to punish me for when I was unconscious for 3 days. According to Shizune-chan, the Konoha Council saw what I did at Hoshigakure as more of a crime than a heroic act, claiming that even if Akahoshi, the official Yondaime Hoshikage, was corrupt, I still killed a Kage without the permission to do so, thus, why I should be jailed, executed, or some bullshit like that. Tsunade-chan would have none of this though, and like the people of Hoshigakure, sided with me and claimed and praised me for liberating them from Akahoshi's tyranny. Plus, she also made the point that an official assassination order for Akahoshi would have undoubtedly been permitted within time anyway, like when Yagura-san was manipulated by Madara Tem's Sharingan to become a tyrant over his own people. Ever since my departure, Hoshigakure saw me as the hero and liberator of their village, and my strength was said to be of legend, since I had both killed their Kage and destroyed the very star that their village was named after, which was supposed to grant unlimited power, just like the stone of Gelul Hado Tem was after following months prior. The people of Hoshigakure were actually a bit enthralled with the idea that their savior would play a part in their lives, marrying a growing woman of their village and watching over them as a protector in the future once more. That, and when they found out that I was the son of Namikaze Minato like so many others did, they practically had a seizure in the process. Hey, I even heard a rumor that the Council of Hoshigakure was thinking that after the war with Madara Tem was over, they were thinking of offering me the position of Godime Hoshikage, as if I didn't have enough growing power already. Didn't I end up going to Nadeshiko village to propose to Shizuka? I think I did. I hope I did. You did, Kit. Which kinda works out anyway, since that old fool Jiraiya promised that one day his student would fight the to-be leader of that village and take her hand in marriage. Yeah, I remember. A shame you didn't have common sense when you first met her before the CRA was enacted upon you. You probably should have taken the offer. Maybe, but we don't know how that would have worked out. True. After our battle that I didn't even want to participate in to begin with anyway, we were confronted by an idiot named Kokuyo who Shizuka had beat before our initial conflict. He apparently wanted to forcefully marry Shizuka to gain power of Nadeshiko village, despite how she spurned his vulgar advances. During his second attack, I sent him and his puppet flying with an Odama Rasengan, which most likely killed him in the process. I told Shizuka that someone with the power to lead a whole village had the right to change laws that they didn't see as prominent, and I told her that I already loved someone else anyway, before coming to an epiphany at that said person much later. Ah yes, the bubblegum-haired bitch. Can you please not refer to Sakura that way? I haven't loved her in quite some time, but I still respect her. Can't see why, Kit. She beat you senseless nearly every day over stupid shit. She was practically more abusive than how Shukaku used to be to his mates. But, not only that, the only reasons you realized that a relationship between the two of you probably was because of the undeniable facts in front of you that had constantly put out of your head for years. 1. She always beat the living shit out of you at every moment. 2. She always found fault with nearly everything you did, regardless if you were successful or not. And most importantly, 3. She could never get over that whole Sasuke leaving the village scenario. Even when it became imperative and unavoidable that he had to be stopped no matter the cost, she never had the guts or drive to actually kill him. Didn't she have the gall to tell you she was in love with you only so you'd stop chasing Sasuke because she didn't want either of you to die when your final confrontation with one another took place? That she didn't want you to bear the burden of bringing him back, which she indirectly placed on you, which nearly got you killed at the Valley of the End to begin with. Must you concentrate on the negative, Kurama? You damn well know I'm not being negative, only factual. You came to truth with these terms a long time ago anyway. And correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't she eventually hold some kind of romantic feelings for you, but at that point it was far too late. You had no further interest in her, and you only wished for her to find happiness in her own way without you by her side. Yes, I did. Sounds like you pussied out to me. I would have wanted that bitch to rot in hell if I were you. I guess that makes me a better person than you then, Kurama. A better person maybe, but not a better demon, Kit. Whatever, I don't want to get into a philosophical debate with you at the moment. The important part is that I think I've properly remembered all the women who would have become my wives through the Clan Restoration Act, am I right, Kurama? Did I remember everyone or did I leave someone important out? My memory is still foggy. I don't know, did you? Come on, Fox. Don't screw with me. We both know you have a better memory than I do. No, you didn't forget anyone. Personally, I still think we should have gone for more. You're incorrigible. Hey, I just like to get tail, that's all. I heard rumors that Gaara had found love in two girls who happened to both admire, respect and love him. I think their names were Matsuri and Sari, with Matsuri being his first apprentice. Whether or not these rumors were true or not, I never got to find out due to the imminence of the war. I hope they were. Gaara-san deserved to have someone or rather someones to truly love him. He had nothing but hatred and fear directed at him nearly his entire life. He deserved his happiness. Sakura eventually came to terms that a relationship between the two of us just wasn't meant to be. I think she actually ended up hooking up with Rock Lee near what was to be the end of the war. I was actually pretty glad for Lee at the time. I knew he liked her for a long time like I always did, so I was happy when I learned that at least one of us finally got with her. The both needed comfort at the time anyway. Sakura for what was happening with my life and Lee-san for the upcoming responsibilities and possible casualties of war. I just hope Lee was ready to have a relationship with Sakura. Kami knows he'll have needed luck and skill for it. Apparently Tenten and Neji finally hooked up a coupling and stopped denying the obvious tension in between them, which I could literally cut through like thick fog at the time. Everyone knew they were just trying to be professional as teammates and the good shit like that, but you can't deny your emotions forever. At one point or another somehow someone's gotta give. Tenten had always admired Neji as the self-proclaimed genius and prodigy of the Hyuga clan back when he was still an arrogant twit before I knocked some sense into him, and then she eventually grew to love the part of him that I installed within him, the kinder, compassionate, understanding side of him that realized people aren't bound by fate and can do anything once they set their mind to it. Some gossip started to spread around the village that during what began as argument between the two, Neji and Tenten had a little premarital incident, which I guess was true since the two started to spend more time together than ever before after said incident. What you really mean to say is they got an argument, somehow they resolved their tensions through some sloppy, and then they decided that they were perfect for each other afterwards. Shut up. I'm ignoring you. Kakashi-sensei apparently hooked up with both Ayame-chan and Mitarashi Anko. I don't even want to know how he pulled that off. I mean, for Gaara it was understandable how he got both Sari and Matsuri. He was a Hokage and that meant more leniency for multiple relationships even without the CRA being enacted upon him. But Kakashi-sensei hadn't had a Hatake CRA placed on him. He had to act as an ordinary guy would to balance his love interests. That must have been an absolute nightmare given how Ayame was usually so sweet and innocent and Anko was, well, not so sweet and innocent. I just hope he treated Ayame-chan with the respect and love she deserved. she was practically like my sister throughout all the years I spent at Ichiraku. One couple that bloomed out the compassion of their love for one another that threw me through a loop was Sai-san and Ino-chan. When Sai and I originally met, I have to admit, I kinda despised him. I only saw him as a would-be replacement for Sasuke, who I thought at the time, should never have been replaced to begin with. We eventually came to have a mutual respect and understanding for each other, as we learned more about each other's background, goals and lives in general. Sai led a pretty tragic life actually. His adoptive brother was killed by an unknown disease and he was forcefully used as a tool for Danzo Tem's root Anbu operations. Sai had actually complimented Ino-chan a few times accidentally after I told him to tell people the opposite of what he actually thought of them, due to the fact that when he addressed Sakura and Choji of what he really thought of them he nearly got us killed twice. Eventually Sai finally found someone he could share his true feelings with. Hanging out with Ino in her flower shop eventually brought out the better side of him. He wanted to have someone to hold for a while, but the curse placed on him by Danzo wouldn't allow him to have such trivial attachments. When Danzo finally died, that curse was broken, and he could finally express his emotions to the fullest. Sai found someone special in his life before he died like everyone else in the war, and for that alone, I'm happy for him. Iruka-sensei ended up getting with Mizuki's ex-fiancé Tsubaki. Apparently they managed to become really good friends after I drilled a hole through that Tem's stomach in our little rematch. The council, for once in their abysmally stupid lives, made a good decision and decided that Tsubaki was innocent of any accusations made to relate her with Mizuki's second attempt at treason against Konoha. I'm actually kinda surprised they didn't try to sentence me like they attempted to when I killed Akahoshi, when even though he was rampant, he was still considered to be the current Hoshikage at the time. Maybe's it because I killed someone who had already proven himself a traitor to my village before, and that revoked any knowledge of him being an instructor and teacher in Konoha's eyes. I guess what began as friends eventually clumsily stumbled its way into something more, which I'm kinda glad happened to Iruka-san anyway. He took a giant shuriken to the back for me for Kami's sake. He deserves to have someone to love and someone to love him back. Tsubaki was always a nice woman from what I can remember, so I'm glad Iruka found a good match for himself. I remember Anko-chan wouldn't stop teasing him about it though, with her comments of who was on top during the relationship. Good thing Kakashi-sensei managed to talk her out of it. Probably the most innocent love that I can think of that occurred during those times was with Konohamaru and Moegi. I actually thought that those two might have gotten together over time due to their similar personalities. I guess I was right. They both loved Konoha. They both loved pranks, they both lived being a ninja, and eventually they found some type of common ground they could both rest on. From what I heard though, poor Udon got his heart broken. I guess he liked Moegi too, but he was too nervous to tell her. I guess that's what happens when you don't make the first move. Then again, I'm not sure if Moegi would have even gone for it to begin with due to that huge nostril dangler of his. That kid really needed to wipe his nose. Kiba ended up hooking up with that girl who beat the life out of me, Karui, I think her name was. They apparently had met some time after I was given some internal injuries by Karui, and their relationship first started off as that was better than whom. Their competitive and aggressive personalities got the better of each other. They both seemed to hate one another from what I heard because they were both bragging about who was better. Their rivalry eventually turned into an angry relationship from what I heard. Sheesh. I heard some rumors that the Raikage, apparently got into a bit of a controversial stance when some tales spread that he had a little, under the desk, action with his assistant, Mabui. No idea on whether or not was true, but despite how cold I was most of the time, I hope he found someone to keep him happy. One of the more shocking relationships I heard was that lazy baka Shikamaru actually hooked up with his sensei of all people, the lovely Yuhi Kurenai. FTER the death of Shikamaru's former sensei at the hands of one Akatsuki's members named Hidan, Asuma-san left more than his legacy behind to his team. He left behind his daughter implanted with Kurenai's womb as well. During the time while Kurenai was pregnant with Asuma's kid, Shika-san told me he promised to his teacher he'd take good care of Kurenai for him, and I guess over time that promise of his evolved into something more than strictly a sensei-student bond and turned into a student-student relationship. I never would have guessed Kurenai as the kind of woman who would go for that sort of thing or even be into younger guys in the first place, but to each his or her own, I guess. After all the bullshit he went through, Shika eventually ended up scoring, and with one hell of a smoking sensei, I might add. Well, I think that's just about all the relationships I had in my past life, and all the other bonds everyone had. Is that about right, Kurama? I didn't leave anyone out, did I? Nah, you're good, Kit. I'm actually surprised you managed to remember all of that due to how long we were out. Now let's try to get some sleep, shall we? We probably still have a few hours before we reach Azula's destination, wherever that is. Fair enough. Pleasant dreams, Kurama. Yeah, you too, Kit. Hey, Kit. Yeah, it's good to be back. I couldn't agree more. 6 hours later. An abundant time had passed since Azula's group had departed from the ruins where they found Naruto imprisoned, and they continued to near their destination with each passing minute. Azula's golden eyes scouted the room of the carriage for any signs of activity, but she found little movement between either of her companions or Naruto himself. Ty Lee had fallen asleep near the edge of her corner, and Mai, who had earlier drifted off, had been awake for the past few hours with a bored expression on her face. Glancing over in Naruto's direction, the long golden-haired boy had been cross-legged in a meditation stance for well over 4 hours now. Both of his eyes, his azure blue one and his pale green blind one, had been closed for quite some time, and it was now difficult to tell whether he was still meditating or he had drifted off himself. Boredom had made itself apparent in her mind as well. She had been awake for at least half the journey, but it seemed as if reaching the shoreline, which would serve as the entrance way to the fleet, seemed to be getting farther and farther away no matter how long the carriage pulled them. Azula had actually brought up the possibility in her mind that they could be under another of the illusions called genjutsu Naruto had mentioned earlier, but they seemed highly unlikely given how concealed the last one had been, and she only managed to pass through that because of the requirement the caster had set for it so long ago. Sigh. I hope that we reach the fleet soon. Too much time has already passed as it is. Father made it clear to me that Admiral Zhao, while powerful in his own right, cannot be truly trusted to lead this invasion on his own. He has already fumbled and failed capturing the Avatar almost as many times as Zuzu has, and that's saying quite a lot considering how pathetic my wretch of a brother is. I'll also probably have to inform Zhao personally that Naruto is not a threat so he can relay that message to the fleet. I don't want an entire armada thinking that what could possibly be our greatest weapon to be further cannon fodder for their own amusement. I'm not sure how he'll even take to my presence in the first place. I know he was informed of my coming and he know to treat the family with utmost respect, but I know that he doesn't exactly like being upstaged. He's a powerful man, but a bit vain at the same time. That being said, I can only hope he doesn't try to cause problems for Naruto, given how much of an he could be to this invasion. Zhao will most likely not trust him specifically due to his background and how he's supposed to be thousands of years older than the already old Avatar, but I will assure Naruto that the Admiral will not be a problem to him. I swear if Zhao tries anything stupid to try to get Naruto injured, I swear by my ancestors that he'll pay for such impudence. As soon as Azula finished her thoughts, a small rumble shook the carriage, to which no one conscious within the cart including herself thought little of it. Most likely they had just hit a bump in the road like they had done so many times before. However, such a cast-off notion was soon eliminated when a full-throttle crash sent the carriage reeling off onto its side, the cries of the guards being heard as a sign of their imminent pain, as well the surprised yells of Azula and her friends being thrown asunder in their method of transport. After the event had ended and the carriage lay on its side, everyone tried to regain their balance from the abrupt incident. Azula kicked herself up as Mai groaned while she clumsily regained her balance, and Ty Lee had found what she had landed on that cushioned her fall so. The pink acrobat had landed on top of the golden-haired boy that she had found interesting and likable in such a short amount of time, the catch being that her had implanted themselves right into his face, to which only a short bit of his face was visible, clearly shocked and too embarrassed to move. Ty Lee nearly kicked herself off of Naruto upon such a realization, her face as bright and vibrant as a tomato, with Naruto still a bit stunned at what had just occurred. The flexible girl's friends who had witnessed said event were a bit flabbergasted, with Mai facepalming in embarrassment and Azula rolling her eyes at the hijinks that unfolded for the group. Regaining her composure and running her fingers through her hair, Azula stood up with a ball of flame coursing in her palm. A slight explosion occurred with what was the top of the carriage from the four's perspective blowing wide open, pieces of wood and furnishings scattering everywhere. The four climbed out of the now ruined transport carefully, each of their feet hitting the ground with as much grace as either one of them could provide. Regaining all of their awareness, they each looked around to survey the damage and the possible attacker at bay. Large boulders and rocks had littered the road ahead of them, each cracking and destroying pieces of the highway ahead of them. Naruto looked back in the direction where they had came from and had observed that the left side of the carriage had nearly been torn apart. A large boulder a few feet behind them had evidence of what appeared to be wood and furnishings tarnishing its side. Azula's eyes narrowed in obvious annoyance, her delicate hands balled up into fists. Earthbenders. The fire princess practically spat, earning the eyes of her companions. The blonde sage was familiar with such a tactic, and knew that this attack was meant to either delay them or, with the hope of their assailants, kill them. It had become increasingly obvious that their attackers were quite possibly aware of their destination, and sought to stop them from reaching it through a violent means. Ty Lee and Mai's eyes darted back and forth, looking for any signs of enemy activity and trying to prepare themselves if they were to be attacked again, which was more than likely a possibility. The three girls knew that Earthbender freedom fighters were quite usually prideful, aggressive warriors, and while guerrilla warfare tactics were abundantly used by them in small raids against Fire Nation transports but usually continued to drive their attack further in most occasions. Naruto's right eye traced the landscape for any sign of his assailants, and more importantly for any strategic points where an enemy could possibly strike from. His enemy, or rather enemies, seemed to be quite stealthy, hidden by whatever camouflage they could find. However, Naruto noticed there was little place for the enemy to hide in such an open area, except for the trees facing either the left or right sides, but such an attack would be predictable and forthcoming, something he had not been used to since his earlier shinobi days of complex battle formations. They couldn't be hiding in the forest, it's too predictable, and much too cramped for people who throw giant rocks to possibly maneuver and aim carefully. The only other places they could have attacked from would be from either in front of us or behind us, and since none of us witnessed the attack, it could be either one. Unless, they're a bit more crafty than I give them credit for. Not from the sides, not from the front or bottom. Below. Activating his Rinnegan, the one good eye of the sage turned into swirling fixture of violet, adamantly concentrated to the inevitable battle before. Violently extending one hand to the ground, he motioned for Azula and her friends to stand back from the surrounding area. Shinra Tensei. A massive controlled force of sheer power exploded from the youth's open palm, exploding the very ground before him and nearly decimating the road ahead of them. Several bodies exploded from under the ground, their shocked visages flying through the air at uncontrolled speeds. Many crashed into the rubble of what was once a road violently, while others did their best to land without suffering too much damage. Once their assailants groggily stood before them, the eyes of Azula sharpened into daggers, while Naruto's now functioning eye concentrated on the foes before him. Most of them were rugged muscular men, but there were at least 4 females in the group who retained a certain aspect of masculinity and power, but not nearly as much as their male counterparts. Counting the numbers before him, there seemed to be about 21 of them. However, the unleashed Shinra Tensei had caught about 6 of them off guard, and their bodies now littered the road, reducing their numbers to approximately 15. Naruto looked back at his companions, giving them the look that told them he'd take care of it. The trio of ladies looked quite surprised at the power he had displayed, and were now distracted by the fact that both of his eyes were now a context of purple swirls. Looking back at his opponents, Naruto's violet eyes intensified at his first battle in his newfound life. I assume you're the louts that attacked us. You didn't do a very good job, we're all alive, and now 6 of your friends are dead because of your combined failure. I suggest all of you turn back now, I do not wish to further bloody my hands with the bile of the unworthy. Naruto calmly and coldly stated, earning a few of the earthbenders to step back in fear or preparation at the unknown power they had witnessed. The tallest and most muscular of the lot pointed at Naruto in anger, and his nostrils flaring and his eyes practically shaking in anger. I don't know what the hell kind of power you used against us, but you're clearly allied with the Fire Nation. We intercepted and interrogated a Fire Nation spy and he spilled his guts to us that the princess of the Fire Nation was going to rendezvous with the fleet led by that disgusting Admiral Zhao. That same spy also informed me that fleet is heading way due north, most likely to the North Water Tribe to launch a full frontal assault against it. This cannot be allowed to occur. The man practically screamed, earning a further glare from Azula in the process. The Fire Princess hated people like these, and hated even more that a spy of her nation had spilled such pivotal intel regarding the invasion operation. To Azula, the spy deserved whatever fate these pigs had planned for him after he had betrayed his own nation out of cowardice. We've come to stop you 4 from supporting Zhao's fleet, no matter the cost. And I don't care what kind of strength the one with the golden hair has, even though the information we gathered said nothing about such a person accompanying the princess of the Fire Nation. It matters not, you'll all die here and your deaths will cripple that accursed nation. The leader bellowed once again, earning a shrug and a headshake from Naruto in the process. Naruto's violet eye looked to Azula once more, giving her the sign that he'd take care of the interlopers. Pressing both of his hands together, the golden-haired sage made multiple hand signs and slammed his palms down into the earth. A large sword with 2 large holes in it seemed to appear from the air directly above the youth, falling into his right hand which he grasped with adamant determination. Kubikiribocho, it's been a long time since I used you last, let's see if you still hold up as well as you did so long ago. The remaining earthbenders as well as Azula and her companions had their eyes widen at the sheer sight of a sword so large, and even more shocking was how the youth could balance its weight so on his shoulders. Regardless, that did not stop Naruto's aggressors from charging furiously at him, which the blonde returned with equal passion at charging full speed as well. As the large group of freedom fighters and Naruto came to a close in physical distance in between one another, Naruto opened up his first attack with a massive running 360 swing of Zabuza's sword cleaving 3 out of the 15 fighters in 2. Their separated heaps hitting the ground with a squishy thud. All of the earthbenders entered defensive stances soon after, amazed that what looked to be a 19-year-old in front of them could swing the sword like it was light as a feather. Nevertheless, their eyes burned with a newfound hatred at the boy for dispensing of their friends so easily. With a rallying cry from their leader, the earthbenders charged once again, hoping to outnumber and outperform the mysterious yet powerful youth before them. 4 of them charged directly against Naruto, kicking up large heaps of rubble on their direct path to the sun-haired youth. While Naruto found it more than easy to carve through the chunks of rock thrown at him, the 4 charging benders, 3 men and 1 woman, were soon upon him delivering blow after blow to the Kubikiribocho in attempt to break his defense. Protecting himself with the flat side of the large sword, Naruto withstood the front of the brutish assault, his violet eyes gazing as more of his foes approached from the same direction, with others incoming from the left and right in an attempt to flank him. Swinging Zabuza's sword in a wide turn to retaliate against his attackers, the 4 benders quickly back-flipped out of the sword's reach and began trying to pelt Naruto with more slabs of rock as their friends made their way to his sides. Once more cleaving through the airborne pieces of earth, Naruto gathered a bright red coursing energy into his free hand as he protected himself from being pelted with rocks as well, trying to keep his flankers at bay. Jumping high into the air, Naruto's eyes surveyed the battlefield as he prepared his next move. Kaden, Furiasutomu no Jutsu, Naruto shouted loudly, and not a moment late several elongated waves of flame burst from his hands, forcing the flanking earthbenders to dodge as the several torrents of fire disintegrated the forward aggressors to ash. Not giving his opponents a moment to think, Naruto raised the Kubikiribocho at a high diagonal point above him, as swirling visuals of lightning appeared around the large sword. Raiden, Boruto Tornado Jutsu O Second. Tossing the large blade with all his might at his assailants, it began to spin in a complete 360 notion soon after it was airborne. It swirled faster and faster until an evident trace of lightning had imbued itself within its steel. And the speed and suction of the air gathering around it had formed a miniaturized tornado, which picked 6 of the unlucky 11 earthbenders who weren't fast enough to dodge the technique or escape its pull. Those trapped within the attack were electrified with enough volts of electricity that it literally made their skin sizzle and fry, and winds caused by the Kubikiribocho were so powerful and sharp they were literally apart the flesh of those unlucky enough to be in its path. The sword quickly swerved high into the air like a boomerang and dislodged all those trapped within the tornado like an empty bag amongst the wind. Their bodies already broken beyond repair landed with sickening cracks as they plummeted to the ground below them, at which at the same time the large blade returned to its owner. Smiling at how easy the fight was going for him, Naruto raised his sword up in the air and it evaporated in a shimmer of light. Cracking his knuckles in anticipation, Naruto ran towards the remaining earth benders at an extraordinarily high speed, with his foes about ready to retreat with their tail between their legs due to this boy's strange powers. Concentrating his strength into his fists, Naruto ended his run with a powerful leaping punch straight into the face of the last remaining female earthbender, shattering her skull in 5 different places in the process as she slammed across the grounds like a cannonball had hit her. The remaining 4 earthbenders including the leader charged at Naruto in a desperate gamble to defeat him, with the first offender imbuing his fist with the earth to create a gauntlet made of rock as he swerved to punch the blonde's face in. Front flipping over the earthbender and delivering a spinning heel kick to the cranium of the next bender who was jumping at him, Naruto landed eloquently as the foe he had just hit crashed to the ground lifeless at the monument impact. The man he had jumped over previously leapt at him once more in a fury, while Naruto extended his hand once more and uttered the phrase that started the battle. Shinra Tensei. The force of the blast literally crushed many of the bones of the solo target, sending him flying in the opposite direction and landing unceremoniously in a crumpled heap near the side of what was once the road. The leader of the strike team and his remaining teammate clenched their teeth in anger and in fear, and then the subordinate ran towards his death despite the protest of his friend, throwing a powerful punch at Naruto which the sage surprisingly made no attempt dodge, much to the confusion of Azula and her friends. The blow landed decisively against his face with a shattering impact, much to the pleasure of his attacker, but that pleasure soon turned to horror when he saw his opponent looking directly into his eyes, unflinching and unfazed by the direct hit. An azure ball of energy spiraled in Naruto's right hand, crackling to life amidst the host's near-endless chakra flow. Ramming the Rasengan violently into the gut of the last of the 2 earthbenders, it quickly started to tear its way into the man's stomach, to which he could not even express his pain due to his obvious shock. Naruto lifted his arm in a sudden motion, sending the man flying like a pinwheel at least 30 yards into the air, to which he crashed far in the distance, where he would be most assuredly dead or near its embrace in the least. The leader of the now non-existent force, his cheeks puffed in anger and in concentration, grabbed the earth below him as his muscles strained themselves for a mighty feat. Naruto decided to watch rather than intercept his attack, knowing the outcome would be the same no matter what he did. The ground shook and split apart as the man uprooted a boulder at least 5 times his size, though he struggled to hold it properly lest its very weight crush him. Using whatever remaining strength he had left, the man hurled the large slab of earth at the golden-haired youth, until the huge piece of stone landed on top of Naruto and his form disappeared into the ground. Azula's eyes widened in both anger and possible fear that Naruto had been crushed to death amidst his overconfidence, while Mai had a look of discomfort upon her face as Tai Li bore a look of extreme worry. The last remaining assailant of the carriage weakly laughed as his muscles threatened to fall apart, but his joy faded immediately when the rock literally split into hundreds of pieces as his foe reappeared from under it, undamaged. Stepping back in fear at the boy's feet, Naruto couldn't help but smirk. He was as powerful as he remembered himself to be in his past life, and that would surely come in handy for what was to come. This had been a pleasing warm-up to confirm if he was still himself, but all good things had to come to an end sooner or later. Extending his left hand at the quivering man, several slabs of earth rose of the ground around him, only to momentarily explode and shape themselves into a multitude of sharpened spears made of rock. The man gazed at Naruto with a look of disbelief and fear, almost begging him with eyes to spare him, but he would find no mercy here. Naruto opened his mouth slowly and then adamantly yelled the words to finish the one-sided battle. Doden, Raka Sekijin no Jutsu, and then all at once, all the slabs of rocks shaped into stalagmite-like foundations impaled the man from all angles. A single moment of unbelievable pain and a lifetime of endless silence. What was once the form of the lead attacker now was nothing more than a bloody husk that now barely reassembled a person and instead looked like some sort of macabre voodoo doll. His body, if one could call it that anymore, was threatening to fall to pieces out of how many large holes had pierced through it, but the corpse couldn't descend to nothing from all spears that held it in place. Turning to the trio of his newfound companions behind him with a victorious smile adorning his face, Naruto wasn't surprised to see what their reactions were. Mai and Tai Li looked both dumbfounded and a tad shocked at the violence Naruto had unleashed, while Azula stood in the middle of the gaping two with an almost sadistic smirk on her face. Raising her hands ever so calmly, Azula began a slow clap for the victorious boy, to which Naruto himself to a playful customary bow. Well done, Naruto, your abilities are indeed quite unusual, but most efficient in times of battle. I must say, I've never seen anyone fight like you do, nor have I ever seen any such techniques in any of my personal accounts of battle. Truly you do possess the skill the spirit spoke of, but I wonder if it is truly to the lengths that Faust described. After all, while your brutality and power is commendable, I could have just as easily killed those fools as well. Azula practically chuckled amidst the chaos that had unfolded, earning a sly almost devilish smile from Naruto as a response. Well, my Heim, I guess you'll just have to wait and see what kind of power I truly have, now won't you? Naruto almost hauntingly implied, earning a shiver from all the three girls in the process. Before Naruto could casually rejoin the group, Mai dusted herself off from some of the debris that had spread from the battle. She opened her mouth to address the young sage's actions. As much as I appreciate your talents in getting rid of our attackers, I think it goes without saying that you were a tad brutal in the way you dealt with them. I know you come from a time long since past, but are you so indifferent about who you kill? Mai stoically stated, earning a small stare from Tai Li and an almost glare from Azula. Naruto merely shrugged and sighed at Mai's comment, knowing full well of how he dealt with his foes and how he took their lives. He knew he'd have to address his methods of combat sometime with them. He had just hoped it didn't have to be so soon. They chose their paths, Mai-chan. I just happened to cross it. Naruto almost replied in an almost monotone fashion, earning an eye raise from the dark girl in the process. In truth, Naruto himself wasn't all too fond of the act of taking a life, but at most times in his past life it was nearly always unavoidable. It would seem that that same scenario hadn't changed for this world at all. He recalled an earlier conversation he had with the spirit called Faust mere weeks before he was sealed away, and how they discussed that humans would always have reasons to kill one another. It would appear that situation would never change, no matter how many centuries would pass. That's a little cold of you, Naruto. I mean, they were our enemies, but I usually don't like to kill people. Ty Lee commented on the side, kicking up dirt almost solemnly with her bright sandals. Naruto smiled at the bright girl and put his right hand on her shoulder. She looked up at his now normal eyes in surprise, captivated by both a pale green and azure blue eye amidst a long set of golden hair. I usually don't like to kill either, Ty Lee, regardless of what my prowess in battle ever will be. However, some people can't be turned from what path they take. I failed to learn that lesson a long time ago, and even more people got hurt as a result of my foolishness. I'll try to give mercy to those who truly want peace, but I will not forgive those who attack me or my friends. Naruto peacefully said, earning a small smile from both Ty Lee and Mai, as well as a very minuscule look of question from Azula. The sage wasn't done there though, as he cupped the acrobat's chin with his bandaged right hand, and brought her face to meet his eye to eye, a blush slowly creeping across her face. Besides, we wouldn't want that pretty face getting hurt now, would we, Tai-chan? Naruto said as he grinned from ear to ear, earning an eye roll from Mai and a small laugh from Azula. Ty Lee, a tad flustered at the intimacy the ancient man had presented, nearly tripped over her feet despite her balance, huffing in embarrassment through crossed arms. Naruto tossed off his now ruined battle jacket, revealing his bare, muscular frontal torso only briefly before he extended his arms to the side, a bright light momentarily engulfing him. After it had faded, it revealed the same cloak he had worn in his fight against the paths of pain. By the way, Naruto, what was up with your eyes during the fight? They turned purple and had multiple swirls in them. A most unusual eye color, even for someone like you. And if you don't mind me saying, it seemed to affect both your eyes, even the one you're blind in. Azula asked inquisitively, wanting to know any possible ace Naruto carried about his non-existent sleeves. Naruto cracked his knuckles again and rested his arms against the back of his head with a smile on his face, and opened his mouth to explain what was most likely to be the first of many explanations. When my eyes changed color, they utilized a Kekkei Genkai, a bloodline limit that mainly royal families from my time had that they utilized in battle. A bloodline limit is within itself a very thing. I only saw such things only a few times when in my past, the Hyuga and Uchiha clans were both very famous for their Kekkei Genkai, the Byakugan and the Sharingan respectively. My Kekkei Genkai is utilized from the blood within my veins that carries connections to the first Rakudo Sanin, the man who I told created what we call the moon. Somehow or another, I'm related to him. He's many times my great-grandfather, which would make sense, considering how I was called the new Rakudo Sanin near the end of my time. The actual name of my bloodline limit is known as the Rinnegan, literally meaning the Samsara Eye. It was said to be the greatest the three great dojutsu, more potent than the Byakugan and more powerful than the Sharingan. A man I knew in my past life once possessed this technique, though when we first met, we were enemies. And then another man, if you could call him that, had the Rinnegan as well, though he only gained it from stealing one of the eyes of the first man I previously mentioned. The Rinnegan allows me to everything for what it is completely. In a way, it overrides the blindness in my left eye and grants me temporary sight in it as long as it is active. I could have beaten those would-be assassins of ours without using my Rinnegan or any other of my enhancement abilities, but I just wanted to test if it still functioned within my body or not. Naruto said as he finished his long-winded explanation, earning puzzled looks from the Fire Nation girls 3. Ty Lee looked the most interested in Naruto's words, staring adamantly at his pale green eye with a look of intrigue. Raising her hand in a somewhat childish notion to ask a question, Naruto perked up and gave her the go-ahead to ask away. Scratching the back of her head for a moment in uncomfortable sense, the acrobat paused for a moment before asking her question. Naruto, if I may be so bold, what caused you to go blind in your left eye anyway? Ty Lee attempted to innocently state, but still succeeded in gaining a look of chagrin from both Mai and Azula. Much to her initial fears. grabbing her friend lightly by the arm, my sighed in a sense of disappointment. Ty Lee, those aren't the things you ask a person, no matter how curious you are about the topic. Didn't you consider that might be a bit of a sensitive topic for him? Mike concluded in an almost secretive manner, Ty Lee's head dropping in a bit of shame as Azula chuckled on the side. Naruto shook his head while bearing a bit of a chuckle himself, waving his left arm casually at the question. Girls, relax. I knew the question would come up eventually. I have no problem with answering it. It's not really a personal topic for me as it is with other people who share this similar handicap. Just know that I earned this scar a long time ago from a man who put his own ambitions in front of the world. And if it's worth mentioning at all, I'm not blind, Ty Lee, I just can't see. The blonde quizzically stated, earning an amused look from both Mai and Azula. You sound much like the scholars I've heard about from my home that live in Ba Sing Se. I heard they're a rather petty bunch though, very uptight and not exactly the most cheerful folk. Mike casually commented on the surprisingly spiritual side of her mysterious new ally. Naruto chuckled calmly and retorted the best he could. Well, when you're around a spirit for so long you tend to get a bit philosophical yourself, though I was unconscious Faust and I could still communicate with one another through our minds. I must say though that I much prefer the company of my fellow humans as opposed to an unearthly presence. Anyway, since our cart is totaled and I'm guessing we have about 3 miles to go in that direction, so how about I just my Jikuken Ido technique to get us directly to where we're going? Naruto casually suggested, as Ty Lee held her stomach in what would be preparation for another instant travel experience. Azula sighed and ran her fingers through her hair and joined hands with Naruto once again, as her free hand was taken by Ty Lee and her free hand was taken by Mai just like before. The sooner we get to the fleet the better. Zhao needs to be informed of you. I'm sure our combined abilities will make little work of the Northern Water Tribe. Azula grimly smiled, visualizing the destruction that would take place upon their arrival to the water peasants' village. She knew that Zhao's fleet was already massive and he could probably take down the Northern Water Tribe on his own, but nevertheless her father had ordered her and her companions to end the invasion, and now with such devastating powers found in this mystery youth the battle was almost an assured victory. Jikuken Ido. And with those words, the group of 4 materialized away into nothing into a faraway area in which they found themselves instantly surrounded by dozens of Fire Nation soldiers. To their right lay a great ocean that stood an even greater fleet ready for battle. Many of the soldiers doubled over in shock or in fear at the ghost-like appearance of the 4, and many more were humbled that one of the would-be phantoms was none other than Azula herself, the princess prodigy child of the Fire Nation, daughter to Fire Lord Ozai himself, one of his greatest treasures and proof that his legacy would rule on high. While many of the soldiers found it customary to bow to the princess of their nation, they couldn't help be distracted from such a duty at the sight of a strange-looking teenager with thick, long hair whose color matched that of the sun. Many of them entered fighting stances at the mere sight of him, and at least 4 held spears to the edges of Naruto's neck lest attempt to move. Before he could retort properly, a rising blue flame from Azula's hand warded of Naruto's would-be attackers. Her eyes and her stance gave an instantly recognizable order to the guards, no words needed to be said to relay her message. They knew full well of Azula's capacity for violence amongst the tales of her bending prowess from a young age. It was obvious the peculiar youth in front of them was obviously of great importance, otherwise Azula would not have defended him so. Even the most rugged of guards firmly backed off and gave a customary bow to Azula and her companions. Challenging the Fire Nation's most powerful prodigy was suicide enough, but attempting to deny the will of the Fire Lord's very daughter was comparable to downright insanity. Making their way past the crowds that quickly parted for them, the Fire Nation princess found herself at the entry point of a long bridge connected to the ground that led to the flagship of the military leader of the fleet. 2 of the guards standing side by side near the ship quickly kowtowed at her presence, one of which Azula looked at directly in the eyes through his thick armor. Inform Admiral Zhao of our arrival. and tell him there is a private matter we must discuss about the coming invasion of the Northern Water Tribe. I'm sure he'll want to know that we've just gained the edge in every possible way, and I'm not just talking about myself." The nervous soldier bowed once more and took off like lightning up the bridge, to which Naruto had to stifle a chuckle at how frightened everyone was of Azula's very presence. Less than a minute later, a large humming sound came from the ship, the sound of the royal horn, which was a customary tradition that let everyone on board the ship know that members of the Fire Lord's royal family were coming aboard. All the soldiers outside of the ship who stood and gaped in fear and respect at Azula stood at attention, each drawing a customary salute to Ozai's daughter. As Azula led her party up the railway to Zhao's ship, she couldn't help but smirk almost evilly. She knew of what the outcome to this battle would have been the same without her presence, but now victory was practically a 100% guarantee. Now she had an ally whose strength was unlike anything she had ever seen, a man who had lived in an ancient world that far preceded the order of the Avatars. A man whose strength and knowledge predated any known historical records, and more importantly, a man whose powers were as unknown as they were destructive, and he would use these powers at a whim and willingly so, a being who possessed near unlimited potential, and wasn't afraid to use it at a moment's notice. Naruto was no avatar, he could possibly be something much, much greater. The avatars had always been afraid to use their powers to their fullest extent under the notion that power in itself was dangerous and had to be respectfully contained, while Naruto carried no such code that prohibited him from using his full strength in its entirety. A being whose sheer indomitable might was on their side now, and to make things even better, it was of his choosing to do so. He had been born in the Fire Nation in a past so ancient that time itself lost history of it, and now he had come to lay waste to his homeland's enemies once again, regardless or not if they were the supposed messiah of the world. Azula almost bore a glint of sheer malevolent intent in front of those who she crossed within the halls of the ship, filled with emotions of pride and want at the new power she would display to the world, the new strength that would give a further rise to the glory of the Fire Nation, and spell certain doom for all who opposed it, avatar or not. The crew finally stopped at the door that led to the bridge of Admiral Zhao. The princess paused for a moment before clutching its handle. "I can't until those pathetic water peasants see what true power is, they have never before seen strength on this magnitude. Neither has the entire world witnessed such might for thousands of years. With my own power and Naruto's ancient strength combined, we can end this pathetic example for a war with one decisive stroke. We can destroy the Avatar here and now. I can't wait till news of this battle reaches every end of the four nations. Everyone's perceptions of reality are about to change in every possible way. With Zhao and his forces here, this would have been a victory. With my presence added to this assault, this battle would have been a simple decisive stroke of triumph. And now, with someone like Naruto here on top of my own abilities. No, this won't be a battle, this will be a massacre." Naruto walked down the looming hallways of the ship, the last in line of the group of five, with a stray guard leading Azula who was second in line to the bridge where the Admiral Zhao lay in eager wait for her arrival. The halls seemed endless to Naruto, every going forward and seemingly never ending, only to find one ending lead the beginning of yet another hallway. A maze made of steel, a labyrinth of iron made to float on the open sea. The pathways seemed press upon, shutting him in almost, slowly approaching with a malevolent intent to smother him. He knew full well that the arts of genjutsu had long since been lost to the world he knew, and that no shinobi trickery was casting the illusions he felt in the recess of his mind. His own worst enemy was himself. He had been on a ship before, but never one as large as the one he had now boarded. Whether it was the claustrophobic environment within itself or his anxiety at beginning his new life that stirred his emotions was unclear, but whatever the case he would continue amongst these steel paths as long as he had the strength to. Another minute passed before they reached their goal, a bead of sweat noticeably shimmering down the side of Naruto's forehead in anticipation. Their path finally stopped at a steel door, which the soldier gracefully opened and held open for Azula and her party. After a brief stride, the Fire Princess and her companions found themselves in the room of a rather large command center for the ship. It was much more spacious than the narrow hallways that they had treaded beforehand, a perfect military checkpoint for overseeing a battle. The man at the front turned ever so slightly to see who had entered his den, only to turn full force when he saw the briefest glimpse of His Highness. He then have a customary bow in respect to the prodigy daughter of the Fire Lord himself. The man before them was rugged in stature, wearing a military outfit that obviously befitted a role of importance and had a sense of indomitability to it. The top of his hair was in a bun, while the rest of it seemed to trace off into massive sideburns that adorned each side of his face. His eyes looked determined and fierce, a strong chin accompanied by an almost sadistic grin showed that this man meant business. He seemed to give a double take in Naruto's direction, as hazel eyes met an azure eye accompanied by a pale green one, the blue sphere shone with an almost animalistic slit to it. This man stared at Naruto for little more than 5 seconds in curiosity, but then he quickly readdressed his interest to his princess before him. Princess Azula, welcome the Fire Nation fleet. It is honored to have the prodigy child for Fire Lord Ozai aboard my vessel. I must admit you have arrived earlier than expected, not that that is an inconvenience of course, I assume your trip went swiftly. The Admiral commented, earning a small smirk from Azula and her friends in response. Even Naruto couldn't help but let out a small smile, knowing full well that Azula's trip had been far from normal. We ran into some complications, but it was nothing I couldn't handle. If anything, the delay we encountered uncovered something most interesting. Admiral Zhao, I'd like you to meet my newest companion and possibly the greatest ally to the Fire Nation. This is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. He will be a great addition for us to have on our raid on the Northern Water Tribe. Azula announced proudly, as the long golden-haired boy stepped fully into the fray to meet the Admiral. They stared at each other for a moment or two, Zhao looking down the newcomer from top to bottom with almost inspecting eyes. Naruto stood still as a statue, not wanting to offend the military leader with any offbeat movement. I hope you take no offense to this boy, but you stand out like a sore thumb. Your attire and most certainly your hair certainly mark you with a unique presence if I do say so myself. Tell me boy, where do you come from? You certainly do not look like a resident of the Fire Nation, and your clothes bear no clear resemblance in affiliation to any of the other 3 nations. Zhao output casually, not once addressing Naruto by his name in the process. Naruto was slightly annoyed at being called a boy. He was far past the age of a prepubescent stature, and there was of course the further irony that he was thousands of years older than the man who addressed him as a boy. The sage chose to hide his slight irritation however, instead maintain a small smile that hid any ill will. Ty Lee went to open her mouth but her maw was quickly covered by Mai's right hand as a muffled string of sentences whispered their way out of the cracks between Mai's fingers. An eyebrow of Zhao's raised in confusion, only to have Azula step forward and address the situation. Admiral Zhao, the matter of how I met Naruto and where he's from is complicated, to say the least. For now, you'll just have to take my word that Naruto is indeed a powerful ally to be had. These words come from the prodigy child of the Fire Lord, you need not doubt them. He has abilities and powers I have never witnessed before, he has done things I thought not possible, even in regards to an avatar. Azula calmly claimed, earning a look of piqued curiosity from Zhao who looked at Naruto with much interest. He cupped his chin with his left hand, only for a moment of thought before he respectfully replied. Indeed. The princess prodigy of the Fire Nation gives her support to this strange newcomer. I am not one to doubt the royal families will ancestors be praised, however, you would not be offended if I said your claims were just a bit superstitious, my princess. If this man is to be such an important to this battle as you claim, I respectfully ask of him to show me some of these powers of yours that even you have not seen before, your highness. After all, if this man is to be our newfound ally, I must see at least a fragment of his abilities firsthand. I do not doubt your words, Princess Azula, but I must see at least a portion of it for myself. Zhao concluded, drawing small glare from Azula in the process, something my entirely couldn't help but back up a few paces upon seeing. Zhao wasn't meaning to sound disrespectful, he implored more than enough that he meant the utmost respect for Azula's reverence, but questioning the royal in any way was often looked upon as heresy by the people of the Fire Nation. Naruto smirked casually, his fingers moving like spiders in preparation for what he was about to do. If the Admiral wanted a small display of power, he would get it, but since he didn't specify about he wanted it, the next move would be all the more satisfying. Performing a few hand signals in front of the group, Naruto extended his right palm openly at Zhao after the signs were performed, causing Zhao to back up a bit in anticipation. But no matter how he prepared himself, the Admiral would have never known what would come next. Juryoku Sutairu Jutsu, Taimazufi Fuden Atsuryoku. And with those simple words, Zhao literally plummeted to the steel form below. An illicit gasp of surprise escaped the mouth of Tai Li, while Azula and Mai watched in amazement as the Admiral lay completely down the floor, not even on his knees, but like he had just lied down for a rest. The same thing occurred to all the fellow soldiers stationed in the same direction of the room where Zhao now lay on the floor. They too hit the ground faster than anyone ever could have thought possible. Many of the soldiers panicked, while Zhao was trying to force himself up, but to no avail. His muscles strained under an invisible force, he couldn't bring himself to his knees, let alone stand. After a minute or two of pointless struggling that amused Azula as she held back a cruel snicker, he finally had the strength to speak again. "WWW, what did you do, boy? ICC can't move an inch of my body, nothing's responding like it should." Naruto rolled his eyes as he prepared to blow Zhao's mind and understanding of power. "If I may interject, Admiral, what I did was simply increase the gravity of your side of the premises by 15 times. What you and some of your crew are now experiencing is 15 times the normal gravity of Earth. If I applied any more pressure, all of you might spontaneously combust." Naruto smirked, earning a grim smirk from Azula and the widened eyes of Mai and Tai Li. Some of the soldiers started struggling even more so due to Naruto's explanation, desperately seeking a way off the ground, to which Naruto could only shrug at their ignorance. But how can one side of the RR room be 15 times the gravity of the other S side of the R room? That defies the LL laws of P physics. I have control over what is unnatural in the eyes of your people, Admiral Zhao. Reality is mine to bend as I see fit. I have the power to make nearly anything I want possible. For example, Juryoku Sutairu Jutsu, Zarapuresha. And then what was little more than an instant, Zhao and his men literally began to float in the air, with even less control than they had before. None of them could properly stay on the ground without floating onto the ceiling or bumping into one another. To Tai Li it was like a constant airborne circus, something the acrobat was deeply amused and intrigued by. Zhao, on the other hand, was not amused. As he tried to regain his footing and remarkably failed at each and every attempt, he couldn't help but snort in frustration at the powers this boy was capable of invoking. He expected a show of power to be sure, but what he and his men were experiencing now was almost supernatural. And now I've merely turned off the gravity on your side of the room. I can't imagine any of you can gain a foothold now due to any force of pressure literally being removed. What you're experiencing now is what outer space is like. There's no gravity there. It's like being a superhero 24/7 up there." Naruto exclaimed in an almost nostalgically childish fashion, earning very confused looks from literally everyone in the room. "You cannot be serious. What you're doing now is completely unheard of in any Fire Nation text, and now you honestly expect me to believe that you've surpassed the heavens themselves and traveled beyond the very stars?" Zhao practically grumbled, still failing to return to the ground in possibly the most awkward of ways. Naruto just shrugged and grinned at Zhao's challenge, ready to humble him once more. "I've just turned your world upside down, Zhao, literally. I'm showing I clearly possess abilities you, and most likely no one for the past thousands of years, has ever seen. Given what I'm showing you now, do you doubt I could make it to outer space? The only unfun part about space is that there's no air, so your intestines will implode from the inside in a matter of seconds if you aren't like me, which sucks for you because you can never go into space like I can. Naruto finished explaining, while Zhao just looked at the boy questioning if he was actually telling the truth or if he was an escapee from a local asylum. Anyway, time to have you back on the ground now, Juryoku Sutairu Jutsu, Seiho Ka. Naruto stated after performing a small number of hand seals, which sent Zhao and his men plummeting into the floor, much to Tai Li's amusement as the acrobat burst out in laughter while Azula stifled a chuckle. Zhao growled lowly in irritation as he and his fellows tried to regain their footing, stumbling a few times in the process as their balance returned. Such constant adverse changes in their central gravity had taken a slight on their sense of perspective. Dusting himself off from the small amount of dirt that littered the steel floor, Zhao looked at Naruto with a sense of not only respect, but perhaps at what hinted at as a bit of jealousy and maybe even anger. It would seem Her Highness's claims are not in the least exaggerated, boy. Your powers are quite unique. I have never seen talents before in all my years in the military, nor have I even heard of them. You speak a language I've never heard before as well. This implies that you are indeed a foreigner, but regardless of your affiliation, what strange land you come from, as long Her Royal Highness Azula regard as such an important, I will not question your being here. Zhao stated officially in a somewhat respectful tone. He refused to address Naruto by his name, but he had clearly learned that Naruto's powers were indeed as powerful as they were mysterious. Your Highness, if we maintain our current schedule, we will arrive at the Northern Water Tribe in the next 2.5 days. Our fleet has gathered itself to its maximum percentage. Every ship and frigate is ready for battle. Zhao commented in an almost gruff-sounding voice, a small indication of bloodlust evident in his voice. Excellent work, Admiral. Signal for the fleet that we're ready to cast off ASAP. I trust our quarters are ready for arrival. Azula said. Of course, Your Excellency. I had them prepared for only the most noble of commendations. It's one hall down from where we are now. Zhao stated with a wide smile across his face, hoping to gain some brownie points by treating the daughter of his Fire Lord with the same accommodations she was given in her castle. Tai Li and Mai looked at Naruto with a look of question and possible concern, to which he merely shrugged. Mr. Zhao, where will Naruto be staying? He is within our company after all, shouldn't he get a room too? Tai Li questioned, hoping not to offend Azula by possibly speaking out of line. Before Zhao could retort, Azula spoke up to answer her question. Naruto can sleep in the same room as Tai Li. I'll have the Admiral prepare for an additional bed to be brought into our quarters. That won't be a problem now, will it, Admiral? Azula questioned in an almost demanding tone, having Zhao tug against his necktie area while he cleared his throat. Oh, of course not, Your Highness. I will be sure it is done at once. This boy has displayed the remarkable powers that I now see will be a great to the upcoming battle. We need not have him share the same accompaniment as common foot soldiers. Zhao responded. Oh, and Admiral, please call Naruto by his name. He clearly deserves at least some method of respect from you. He is clearly a man, not a boy like Zuzu. Azula said with a hint of respect for the golden-haired sage evident in her voice, to which Naruto couldn't help but lightly smile that the royalty of this time was already giving him a bit of respect. He noticed Mai fidget slightly at the name of Zuzu, something he would question her about later. Why yes, of course, Your Highness. If you wish Naruto to accompany your quarters, I have no right to question it. Zhao said. Good. Now then, if you need to speak with any of us, Admiral, we'll be in our quarters. Azula said calmly as she turned to leave. Her companions including Naruto had already turned to leave and were practically walking down the hallway now. As Azula entered the doorframe, a small cough from Zhao stopped her. Yes, Admiral, Your Highness, Now that we are alone, I feel more comfortable to speaking with you. With all due respect, you have not mentioned on how you or your companions met, Naruto, to begin with. His abilities that you have witnessed while I thought to be merely an exaggeration have been proven real, as mysterious and powerful as they are. While I should not have doubted your reverence for his strengths, you will forgive me if I question whether or not he is our ally. Zhao stated with a tone of authority. Azula's eyes squinted in a small amount of anger even as her back faced the admiral. He is clearly a foreigner who wishes to serve our great nation. While this is the first step of what the Fire Nation hopes to accomplish, to have all the other nations bend to us, is it really wise to accept him so freely despite his abilities? He looks nothing like any resident of any nation I've ever seen. The way he dresses himself accompanied by that long, flowing golden hair of his make him stand out like a sore thumb amongst any normal people. How can we be sure he is even a resident of any of the bordering nations at all? Perhaps he is from a foreign yet to be explored. He could be the first of many from a native land lying in wait to declare war on us when we are most vulnerable. And even if he is from one of the other nations, what's to say he won't betray us from the inside once he has our trust? The admiral finished, while Azula lightly clamped her hands in frustration. Admiral. Yes, Your Highness. Naruto is to be respected as not only a member of this ship, but as one of my companions and as an ally to this nation. He holds many secrets within him that will grant great honor, good fortune and endless power to the Fire Nation. I will not have such an advantage swindled by jealousy and suspicion. Do I make myself clear? Why yes, Your Highness. I will explain the origins of how I met Naruto and where he is truly from after our victory over the Northern Water Tribe. Until then you are to not question him in any way. Oh, of course, Your Highness. If you have need me of Admiral, I will be in my quarters accompanied by fellows. Azula calmly walked out of the room afterwards, calmly shutting the door behind her. She couldn't help but smirk as she left and wandered down the hall. Getting under people's skin was ever so satisfying. It was even better when they were of a so-called importance, and yet they couldn't do anything her due to her station. Zhao on the other hand was less than pleased. As soon as he was sure Azula wasn't close enough to hear, he huffed in audible frustration, a small fire growing in his hands out of irritation for the scenario that had confronted him. HRRGH. This is more than annoying. After so long of trying to prove myself to His Majesty, I finally have the chance to stand beside the princess of our great nation, the prodigy child of the Fire Lord Ozai himself. A chance to bask one of the greatest victories our nation has yet to have against those water tribe animals, an opportunity to show the ingenious, cunning and brutality of our resolve. And then, the people would talk of how Admiral Zhao and Princess Azula led the charge on that fateful day, and how we would emerge as heroes from the wreckage in the eyes our people, and how I would be personally rewarded by His Majesty himself. And now, this. Right when I have the opportunity to redeem myself for my failures over letting the Avatar escape again and again, and to bring honor and glory to my people, an outsider steps into the fray. This boy, whether he has the approval of Princess Azula or not, is very, very dangerous. The abilities he just displayed to me are unlike any type of bending I have ever seen or heard of before, and I doubt that he showed me even the minimal amount of what he can truly do. Not only is he a potential threat to the Fire Nation, but he marches aboard my vessel with the approval of the Fire Lord's daughter, humbles my men and I with unknown powers and will be taking part in a battle that was supposed to my defining moment of glory. If he can prove himself of use to this battle, then I will be willing to accept that, but he will not steal the honor and privilege being the deciding factor of this battle. That right belongs solely to Her Highness and I. Not only will that day be a great victory for the Fire Nation, but it will also result in the destruction of the Northern Water Tribe, a symbol to all who would defy the Fire Nation of our path to greatness. And most importantly above everything, there will be cheers across the capital as the rest of the world cries out in despair that the Avatar has fallen at long last, and that wretched legacy of altruistic defenders will have finally ended. The people of the Fire Nation will forever tell tales about the admiral named Zhao, the man who dealt the killing blow to the Avatar in his last waking moments. I will be known as both a hero and a champion of this great nation, and His Majesty will finally see me in the light I was born to be in. And best of all, that sniveling disgrace of a son of his will be brought to the stage on his final failure. With the Avatar dead at my hands, Zuko will never have the chance to redeem himself in the eyes of the nobles or more importantly His Majesty. I will be the hero champion of the Fire Nation alongside the mighty prodigy Princess Azula. And no one, especially not some sun-haired teenager, will steal this honor from me. It would be quite a tragedy if an accident were to befall him during the battle. We shall see what opportunities time brings. Meanwhile, Azula and her companions had made themselves comfortable at their quarters. The room was much like how Azula had remembered her quarters back at the palace. Zhao had not exaggerated in his claims about making her feel at home. It looked as if the room had been decorated for noble accompaniment, filled with the finest room decor fit for royal blood as well as any they wished to accompany them. A small desk and accompanied by large mirror sat to the left side of the room, complete with a stool so anyone could address their looks in the ways that they wanted. A large bed near the middle to back of the room decorated with the same furnishings of Azula's resting place at her home laid suitably down for her to rest. Since the bed was so large and the room itself was rather compact, Azula had agreed with Ty Lee's statement that the girls could sleep together in the same mattress. While a seemingly intimate notion, Azula looked upon sharing her resting place with her friends as little more than courtesy. Even though she would never admit, she highly revered both Ty Lee and Mai as the only two people she could really connect with. She just could never click with anyone on the outside world or in her father's court. Ty Lee saw the bed-sharing event reminiscent of the parties they used to have when they were little, and snuggling with Azula always made her feel warm inside. While Mai had grown used to sharing a bed with her friends, since they were considerably older now she felt the act was more intimate than it let on. She only prayed that Naruto wasn't a pervert who would try to take advantage of the situation. If he did, she was ready to lodge a knife in between his legs to make her point. Naruto's bed had already been dragged in swiftly by two accompanying soldiers, who left in the right side corner of the room with as much distance from Azula's bed as possible. It was not as royal as what Azula and her friends had been given, but it was of much better stature and condition than what the common soldiers were given. The young sage entered the room with a small smile on his face, taking around the surroundings of his quarters. Mai sat on the stool and laid her back against the desk. Azula sat comfortably on her bed and Ty Lee was meditating at the end of the mattress. I'm surprised even with you authority Azula Haim that you managed to get Admiral Zhao to agree letting me share the same quarters as you and your friends. I'd thought he'd be a little bit more protective, that's all. Naruto chuckled nervously, as Azula gave him a small questioning look. What do you mean by that, Naruto? What exactly are you trying to imply? Well, how do I say this without offending you? Naruto quipped as he scratched the back of his head trying to find a way to explain the situation without having a foot end up in his groin. It didn't take Azula long to get the picture however, as a small blush creeped across her face. Ty Lee and Mai, who had been listening in, couldn't help but blush as well. Just because you're in a room with three girls, don't get any ideas out of it, Naruto. Mai commented with a cold tone, making Naruto gulp in a tad bit of fear. He knew pissing off a female, young or old, was always an incredibly foolish idea. And to have to share a room with three of them could be more of a curse than an envisioned godsend. Even though his former sensei was quite the pervert and would most likely try to take advantage of the situation, Naruto knew that for his general safety he would keep his hands to himself, lest he lose his manhood, end up a burned corpse and be thrown overboard to the passing sharks. Azula coughed lightly to break up the tension, clearing her throat to speak again. Even if Zhao disapproved of the four being together in the same room, he couldn't do much about it to begin with. I'm the daughter of the Fire Lord, he's only a fleet admiral. Plus, Even if you were involved with NES, Zhao really wouldn't have a say in any of it anyway. Azula commented casually, trying to hide her light blush about the thought of more primeval, carnal actions. Azula, do you mind if I ask you a question? Naruto asked politely. I don't see the harm in it, so ask away. Who's Zuzu? There was a small silence that overtook the group, with Azula bearing an almost sadistic smirk as Tai Li grinned wildly. Mai was trying to hide an evident smile and maybe a small blush, something Naruto had noticed. He scratched the back of his awkwardly as he sat down on his bed, wondering if he had stumbled on a bad topic. Zuzu, or rather Zuko, is the son to the Fire Lord Ozai and my older brother, though by how far fate has separated our paths I dare say we aren't related at all. Azula practically chuckled, earning a puzzled look from Naruto. You see Naruto, Zuzu is what we call the runt of the litter. Even though he's my older brother and was born before and even has a higher claim to the throne, he's an absolute disgrace to my family. He's soft, gentle and fragile, his firebending skills are only of average skill, while I was born a prodigy. Do you know how disgraced my father felt when he learned his eldest child had such little potential? And then one day, my brother crossed the line and dishonored my father in his own throne room. He learned his lesson that day, he never forgot never to cross our father ever again. Azula noted darkly, something Tai Li shivered at and Mai couldn't help but wince at. Naruto was oblivious to what this prince had suffered, and decided to let his curiosity take over. How was he punished exactly, Azula Haim? In my time when a ninja dishonored his or her village to a heavy extent they would be exiled from said village, and ex-nin is looked upon as an embodiment of dishonor and shame. Naruto commented, earning small smirk from Azula.